So what happened? Chiang Ching-kuo gets invited to the United States, entertained at the White House by President Eisenhower. He goes over and meets at the CIA with the CIA director while he's in Washington. And he dropped by the Department of State, where John Foster Dulles, who years earlier had plotted the overthrow of his father, said, "You've been a little rough on the Taiwanese people." A little rough. That's what they're talking about, the White Terror, a little rough. Shame on the American government. January 11th, 1954. Time for another CIA secret report. This one was called China in the Shadow of Communism. But they quickly decided, well, this shouldn't be secret. This is good propaganda. And they published it into a booklet. And now America learned about two Chinas, Red China and Free China. Except the problem is, Free China, Taiwan, was neither free nor China. The Department of State publication, China in the Shadow of Communism, was simply propaganda, pro-ROC propaganda. Now the Americans, instead of being silent about the atrocities committed in the island, was defending and promoting the regime. Chinese began shelling Quemoy and Matsu that year. Members of Congress said, whoa, what's going on here? It's getting out of hand. And on December 1st, 1954, the Mutual Defense Treaty was announced. January 24th, 1955. Now President Eisenhower makes his own message to Congress about Taiwan. President Eisenhower. Since the end of Japanese hostilities in 1945, Formosa and the Pescadores have been in the friendly hands of our loyal ally, the Republic of China. Friendly hands? The ROC had bloody hands. Shame on Dwight Eisenhower for saying that. America's foreign policy with respect to Taiwan, I call the four doubles. Double talk, double standard, double dealing, and double cross. April 16th, 1955. Another CIA report. This one was going to stay secret and remain secret for years and years and years, hidden away from the American public. And of course, the Taiwanese people never had an idea what the American spy agency was saying. This secret CIA report was titled, Morale on Taiwan. Well, I would think the morale of the people on Taiwan, suffering as they were, would be of interest to the American government. But it turns out that the CIA report was not about the morale of the Taiwanese people who were doing the suffering. It was about the morale of the ROC mainlanders. That's what the report was about. Let's read a little from the secret CIA report. Strong countermeasures are being enforced throughout the island against communism, which is being effectively suppressed. Strong countermeasures, effective suppression. Those are the code words for white terror. The Taiwanese have some resentment of the ROC invaders. The CIA was even actually at this point calling them invaders. But I think the phrase some resentment didn't come very close to describing the suffering and the pain of the Taiwanese people. But the psychological factor of the Taiwanese people is of little importance, the CIA said, because the Taiwanese people are largely passive. So the CIA report identified the four groups of people who they were concerned about. The first group was Chiang Kai-shek, his family, and his immediate circle of advisors, about 100 people. And they said that's the most important group that we should be concerned about. The second group that the CIA said has some degree of importance is the military and security officers. The third group is the ROC government officers. And the fourth group are the rest of the mainlanders. But the CIA said really the only two groups we need to worry about their morale are the soldiers, the secret police, and Chiang Kai-shek's family and friends. And the morale of anybody else doesn't matter. Secret, they marked it. President Eisenhower read that report, though. At least he was given it. I presume he read it. During that time, there was a senator in the United States by the name of Joe McCarthy. And he began talking about the communists in the State Department and started going after those that cared about Taiwan. Now, a lot of people, and Joe McCarthy's charges were later proven to be false, and his reputation is... But at that time, nobody knew that. They thought he had some secret information. Well, Joe McCarthy actually did have some information. Misinformation. Misinformation that had been fed to him by the ROC government. Nobody really knows that Joe McCarthy's false charges against the State Department originated in Taiwan, originated by the ROC government. That same year, 1955, General Sun, who had been loyal 5 years earlier, 10 years earlier, and had refused to engage, 5 years earlier, and refused to engage in an overthrow of Chiang Kai-shek. Chiang Kai-shek had been watching General Sun and said, well, I know the Americans approached him, I don't think I can trust him. And General Sun in 1955 was placed under 33 years of house arrest for his loyalty to the ROC regime. That same year, the Green Island political prison contained 14,000 political prisoners. The American government has estimated, based on ROC official records, that during the period 1949 to 1987, that there were 29,407 arrests that they officially know about, and 4,500 executions. But that doesn't begin to talk about the missing people. When a census was conducted years later, several years later, a missing household category, there were 120,000 Taiwanese people that were missing from the census. No one knew where they were. That's because they were buried in fields, their bodies dumped in the rivers had floated out to sea. 120,000 missing people. When you add the 120,000 missing people and the 30,000 that now they admit were executed and murdered during the massacre and White Terror period, that's 150,000 people killed while the American government did nothing. In 1958, the CIA got a new boss in Taiwan, a man by the name of Ray Klein. And Ray Klein ran the CIA station in Taiwan for 4 years, from 1958 to 1962.